I'm not so familiar how it is in the US, but in Europe, when you're in the mid-sized companies, engineers tend to be there for long periods. We have customers where the engineers have been working there for more than 20 years. That's not the case in Asia.
Okay. Could you share an example of what are the different priorities that they have to consider when they source the lighting as far as...
Yeah, okay. So let's say when you are in a technical field, then where you need, for instance, you have a process light, a light to expose to a surface or to, whether it's a wafer or whether it's a metal or it's a plastic or whatever. Then usually between the light source and your target device, you have an optical system. Mm-hmm. So the optics part is also part of your machine. And the optical requirements will look for different parameters than in the general lighting field, where you don't necessarily have an optics or only very simple optics. So the understanding of the optical parameters, and in this particular light density, angular distribution, on which angle you distribute the light, these are more important in the technical fields.
Right.
And then also about the stability of your light source will feed back into the power supply requirements that are driving lamps.
So this information is probably not available on Alibaba product page.
No.
How is a typical entrepreneur supposed to solve all these problems?
Usually, if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to offer value to your end customer.
Right.
So meaning you need to do something better than it's already done by your competitor. Either you are much, much lower cost, but that's normally not a consistent or not a sustainable way of doing it, because your competitor could just lower the cost. But you have to offer something fundamentally better. So one of the main questions we ask our clients: which competitive advantage do you target?
So they can't have it all. They have to choose one.
Or one or two or three, but which are relevant to their customers.
Okay. And by offering their customers something with a competitive advantage, that ensures that their profitability will be there. But then now there's a manufacturing problem to deliver on that competitive advantage.
So, and that's why we often face a situation that we have incredibly genius people that build prototypes that offer fantastic product capabilities. Mm-hmm. Well, and then they have demand, and now they have to do it at a certain level of scale. It can be from a couple hundreds to a couple thousands to a couple 10,000s. And then you hit the world of manufacturing. And one of the major things called tolerances. On everything there are tolerances.
What's a tolerance?
Well, tolerance is, I have a light and you produce LEDs. Some are brighter, some are less bright. Some have this color, some have that color. So you have
almost like you sacrifice something.
There's always no two products are exactly the same.
Right.
It's like when you cut a piece of wood and you cut two, the second piece of wood might have a little bit different length.
Yeah.
By how much difference? And that's called tolerance. And whether tolerance matters in your design or it doesn't matter in your design, that's engineering and to go into that one.
Okay.
So that means whatever you manufacture, there's always tolerances. It depends on the equipment you use, it depends on the material you use, it depends on the people that skills that they have inside, and all of those things have to be addressed. And that's often underestimated in the beginning.
Why is it underestimated? Is it that a problem that comes up during the process?
Yeah, but people think, oh, I built such a beautiful product. Why don't you just build exactly the same again?
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, and that's not so straightforward when you hit effective manufacturing.
So what because in this sort of globally connected world, ever connected with the internet and globalization, couldn't these entrepreneurs travel to Asia, explain the problem to the factory boss, and solve it?
Yes, but then you hit the engineering side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the entrepreneur in the West, his Chinese ability is not that great.
Yeah, right.
And the English ability of the engineer at the manufacturer side is often not that great either. Because I'm not sure how you experience it, but when you were in school, those people that had into the science subjects, their foreign language ability is not that great usually.
Right. I'm a language guy, which means I have zero technical ability. And
Okay.
That's how it works.
And the technical guys are the opposite guys.
Yeah.
And that is no different in the West than in the East.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a language barrier that need to be addressed.
Okay.
And then often the boss of the manufacturer say, oh, no problem. I hire a young English-speaking lady and she will explain it. Yeah, and you explain it to the English-speaking lady. But she doesn't get the technical issue across because she doesn't understand the technical part of it.
Right. So the more people the message has to travel through,
Yes.
the more eroded it gets.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why when we are conducting our meetings with the manufacturers and there are engineers on staff, which are, if this happens in Taiwan or in China or with them, it's usually in Chinese.
Okay. So most of these conversations happening in Chinese.
Yes.
Right. So, as I understand, Celinius, you're here to solve these problems, these complex manufacturing problems.
Yeah, better not too complex.
Not
the
too
simple
complex.
products can be complex enough for most people already.
Yeah. And what makes you guys uniquely qualified to help out and solve these problems that we just discussed?
Well, another challenge when doing it in Asia is the retaining of information.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so familiar how it is in the US, but in Europe, when you're in the mid-sized companies, engineers tend to be there for long periods. I mean, we have customers where the engineers have been working there for more than 20 years, 10 years, 15 years. That's not the case in Asia, at least not in the Chinese part. Japan, yes, but in the Chinese-speaking part of Asia.
You're talking about employee turnover.
Employee turnover, yes.
Okay.
So it's not enough to tell the engineer and then this supplier will be able to do your job forever. We often encounter the situation that after 2 years, especially after Chinese New Year, 2 or 3 years after the bonus is paid, the engineer may have left because he got a better offer or he went back to his hometown or whatever. And passing on the engineering knowledge to the junior staff is not such a common habit being found. We have some exceptional suppliers where they have a very good strategy on retaining their staff, in which they tend to do better. But I would say the majority of the companies, they're very cost cautious. This is reflected in the relevant employees' pay, and which then leads to a departure of the knowledge with the person.
Right.
So that's why when we go with our suppliers, we are not happy just to provide them with drawings and say you produce, but we are also documenting their production process and their internal checkpoints, their internal measurement guidelines, the equipment they use. Also look at how often they calibrate that equipment.
Wow.
Those kind of things have to be addressed. And that's very difficult when you are far away.
Right.
And then another one, but the good news is that since we are usually the customer of the supplier, we can force them because we have the monetary power. Whereas if there's no incentive for it, there's no benefit, may not be so cool. So I have to say, frankly speaking, typically in March, we are very busy on conveying already previously provided knowledge back into the manufacturing process.
So what happens is in March, new guys get employed,
Yes.
and you cannot rely on that company to know what their customers need specifically.
No, it's
Interestingly
because
enough.
when you have a staff turnover of 20, 30, 40% around Chinese New Year, even these bosses wanted to do it. If they have a couple hundred employees, it's practically impossible for them.
So you prepare these plans that from your clients, show them the new engineers, and then get the manufacturing
I
consistent.
usually get my PM go back to on the ground
Right.
when they go
Yeah.
into manufacture to just already prevent things to go wrong. But that's where we are, and that's I would call a seasonal work pattern that we have to address.
So you guys are busy in March, I think, every year.
And we like to start new projects in March to avoid that, to have the chance to have it finished by January, so that we don't have to do that twice.
Okay. So your turnover is amazingly great. Like
Low, you mean?
low, yeah. I mean, your turnover is amazingly low. And I think this is important for your business.
Absolutely. I mean, people make it or break it, right?
Yeah.
You need good people on staff.
Yeah.
And you can, as every entrepreneur, I can also tell them, you cannot do everything yourself. You need to focus on passing the important matters on to your staff, and you have to be able to rely on your staff. And you can only rely on staff if you treat your staff adequately and pay them adequately. And of course, this is something that we need to earn. Otherwise, how can we pay our staff?
Right. Okay, so for entrepreneurs looking to start sourcing special lighting, let's say either through you or through another method, could you just go through a simple framework, step by step, that they need to know before they start?
Okay. Usually we hit the entrepreneurs at a different level of it. So I'll give you an example. If you have an entrepreneur that already built a successful prototype by 3D printing, putting some things together, has already a proof of concept that it works, then we usually start with the engineering files from there. And then the next step is to refine them from the design for prototype to the design for manufacturing. Yeah, because you have a 3D printed plastic and an injection molded plastic is different. You have a CNC made metal, or you have a die casted metal, as a different story. So we start looking into those things to make them ready for mass production. So that's the first engineering review. And then we'll review that also with some of the manufacturers that are probably useful for that particular product to be made. And then we'll make a quote. And the quote usually consists of a setup cost or kind of tooling parts, so initial investment that's needed to get it to manufacturing, and a unit price and an MOQ. And then if you have higher volume, you usually get a better price.
Are you willing to share some of the typical numbers, or do we need to
Well, I can say one thing. Depending on the complexity, a tooling can be anything between 2,000 and 80,000 US dollar, or 100,000 US dollar if it's not too big. It can be bigger. I mean, tooling you can go unlimited, yeah. But and typical MOQs are 500 to 1,000 pieces, and then for the unit prices, that depends on lamp. Can be from very low to very high. But we usually do not like to take projects where each manufacturing order is less than 10,000 US dollar.
Right.
Because otherwise the effort to get everything ready is not commercially viable.
Are you aware of the long-term cost savings when they invest in somebody like you versus try to handle it themselves, going to Asia, sourcing through Alibaba?
Okay, so one of the biggest costs that a Western entrepreneur has when launching their product is actually the compliance cost. So not just to make the product, you cannot immediately put it on the market. In Europe, you need to have a CE declaration. And if you take that CE declaration a little bit serious, you need to do some verification tests. And a typical safety approval for a power plug connected product, you're looking at 7,000 to 10,000 euros.
Wow.
just for the safety check if you have an external party to do this.
And this goes to the verification.
Just verification. You haven't done anything else. Just going to get somebody else to look at it to say, yeah, it's safe to use it. And that, depending, you can take this to level, how low you go, how far you go. But another EMC check, $2,000, easy, euros, can happen. So it's much better to have your product pre-checked in China or in Taiwan or wherever before you send it off to a laboratory. You pay a huge amount and they will tell you, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, that one doesn't work.
And you still have to pay the...
And then you have to take it again.
Oh, wow.
If you take it serious. I mean, you have some entrepreneurs that try to cut corners, but usually they get hit eventually at some point in the future.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's why we also say again, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Try to, on the common side, try to take what's already being proven and focus on where you can deliver the value to your customer.